For millennia, the galaxy knew war as a silent affair, a ballet of light and shadow fought in the quiet dark. Starships were elegant daggers. They slipped past defenses without a sound. Their weapons were beams of focused energy. They left no trace but a wisp of vaporized hull. War was an art form. It was clean, precise, and above all else, quiet. The goal was never crude destruction. It was a strategic disabling of systems, a graceful victory won with minimal fuss. War was a game of star chess played by ancient minds, a contest of intellect and subtlety. The loudest sound on a warship's bridge was the soft chime of a successful strike. Then you arrived. You brought thunder to the quiet war. Your ships were not elegant. They were monuments to industry and function. They were built of heavy steel and thick armor plate. Your engines did not whisper, they roared with the fury of contained suns. Your chemical thrusters bellowed defiance at the void. You did not glide into systems. You blasted your way in on columns of fire. The galaxy was not prepared for your noise. They were not prepared for your methods. You did not get the memo about the dress code. The unspoken rules of civilized warfare were unknown to you. Your very existence was an offense to their refined senses. They believed war was a silent art. You were about to teach them it was a heavy metal concert. And you were turning the volume all the way up. Your first meeting with the masters of quiet war was inevitable. Your scout ship, the Stalwart, pushed deep into unclaimed space. It was a blocky, ugly thing by galactic standards. Its fusion engine left a trail of loud radiation. It was a breadcrumb trail for anyone listening. And they were listening. It appeared without warning, a vessel of shimmering crystal and woven light. It had no visible engines, no weapon ports. It moved with an impossible grace. It was a ghost ship, a creation of the ancient race known as the Silenti. They were the architects of the quiet war. They were its most devoted practitioners. The Silenti ship opened a channel. Your bridge speakers filled with a cascade of serene, harmonic tones. It was complex and beautiful. Your linguistic computers worked furiously to translate it. Your captain, a man named Marcus Thorne, waited patiently. He tapped a finger on his worn console. The screen finally flashed with the translated text. It was a formal greeting. It requested your point of origin and your star charts. It asked for a summary of your culture. It specifically requested examples of your art and music. Captain Thorne read the message twice. He looked at his communications officer. A faint smile touched his lips. "Tell them we appreciate the welcome," he said. His voice was calm. "And tell them we have brought some of our art." He paused for effect. "It's a new school of expression. We call it percussive kineticism." His officer relayed the message. The Silenti vessel remained still. It seemed to be considering your strange words. It probably expected a data packet of paintings or symphonies. It had no concept of what was coming next. You did not send a data packet. You launched a single small probe. The probe was not for communication. It painted the Silenti ship with a targeting laser, a beam so tight they would not detect it. Not until it was too late. Captain Thorne turned to his weapons officer. "Single shot from the main gun," he ordered. "Dumbfire. No guidance." Your ship shuddered, not from a laser discharge, not from a plasma bolt. Resonant thump echoed through the hull, a sound of immense mechanical force. A 20-kilogram tungsten rod was hurled into the void. It was propelled by magnetic rails, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. It was a simple, stupid piece of metal. It was a rock. The Silenti shields flared to life, a beautiful shimmer of golden energy. They were designed to disperse and absorb energy weapons. Lasers, plasma, particle beams, they could handle it all. They were not designed for a rock. tungsten slug did not care about energy fields. It cared only about momentum. It struck the shield like a hammer hitting a gong. The impact did not create a flash of light. It created a sound, a brutal, physical crack that echoed in the space between ships. The energy shield buckled violently. It sent a shockwave of raw vibration through the Salenti vessel. Alarms they hadn't used in centuries shrieked across their bridge. The crystalline hull of their ship rang like a bell, a deep, discordant tone of surprise and damage. The first shot was fired. It was not a declaration of war. It was a statement of intent, a promise that the quiet was over. You had arrived, and you were going to be very, very loud. The recording of that first encounter reached the Galactic Council. The Council convened in the Great Chamber on the Citadel, the station of impossible size and age. The beings gathered there were the old blood of the galaxy, creatures of pure energy, crystalline entities, gaseous philosophers. They represented trillions of souls across 1,000 peaceful worlds. They watched the Salenti ship's log on a vast holographic display. First, they saw your ship, the Stalwart. Its sharp angles and visible plating were offensive. It lacked any sense of flow or beauty. It was a tool, not a work of art. The council members shifted uncomfortably. A low murmur of distaste filled the chamber. They listened to your language, the harsh, guttural sounds of human speech. It grated on their sophisticated auditory senses. Then came Captain Thorne's message about percussive art. A few of the counselors actually recoiled. The concept was barbaric. It was a joke in the poorest possible taste. Then they saw the weapon fire, the ugly, physical projectile, the brutal impact against the Salenti shield. The hologram perfectly replicated the sound, that vulgar crack of kinetic force. A collective shudder went through the chamber. This was not war. This was vandalism. The High Counselor of the Cygnian Ascendancy spoke. Its form was a swirling cloud of iridescent gas. Its voice was a series of perfectly modulated chords. They throw solid matter, it chimed. They propelled chunks of metal across the void, like primitives throwing stones from a cave. Another counselor, a being of solid crystal named Xylar, vibrated in agreement. Their engine signature is an abomination, a chaotic roar of uncontrolled fusion. It pollutes the starways with noise. Its voice was the sound of grinding gems. They are a plague of sound in a silent galaxy. The debate was brief. The verdict was unanimous. You were not a serious threat. You were a momentary disruption, a species of loud, crude barbarians. You would surely exhaust your primitive resources quickly. You would be contained and studied, a strange footnote in their long and quiet history. They saw your noise as a weakness, a sign of your crude nature. They could not comprehend that it was your greatest strength. Their failure to understand was your most powerful weapon. They judged you by your lack of grace. They were about to be judged by your surplus of power. The council dismissed you. That was their first mistake. It would not be their last. The Salenti moved to punish your transgression. They assembled a fleet, 50 of their finest ships. They slid through the void in a perfect, silent formation, a lattice of deadly grace. Each ship was a masterpiece of stealth technology. Each was armed with weapons that could slice a moon in half without making a sound. They came to restore the quiet. They expected to find your scout ship alone, or perhaps a small, clumsy squadron. They were prepared for a battle of light and maneuver, a civilized affair of tactical prowess. They were not prepared for what they found. They were not prepared for your third fleet. Admiral Jonathan Cole stood on the command deck of the INS Thunderchild. It was the fleet's flagship, a supercarrier that bristled with gun turrets and missile pods. It was a beast of a ship. Ugly, powerful, powerful, and very, very loud. He watched the Salenti fleet arrange itself on the main view screen. They were beautiful, and they were about to die. Cole smiled, a grim, tight-lipped expression. "They're all lined up for us," he said to his comms officer. How polite. He keyed the fleet-wide channel. His voice was steady and clear. "All ships, engines to full combat power. Let's make some noise." Your fleet did not just appear. It announced its presence with a wall of sound and fury. 100 human warships ignited their main drives at once. The silent void was torn apart by a controlled, sustained roar. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated power. It was the anthem of your species. The Salenti sensors were overwhelmed. They were designed to detect faint energy signatures, not a tidal wave of raw thermal and gravitic distortion. Before they could recalibrate, you fired. You did not lead with lasers. You did not open with polite energy beams. You opened with a swarm of missiles, hundreds of them. They were not subtle. They burned with bright chemical flames. They left thick contrails of smoke in the vacuum. They screamed across the darkness toward the enemy fleet. The Salenti point defense systems reacted instantly. Needles of white light lanced out. They sliced through dozens of your missiles. They detonated in silent, clean bursts. But they could not get them all. The first missile struck a Salenti cruiser. The impact was not a quiet flash. It was a concussive, dirty explosion. A ball of fire and shrapnel erupted from the ship's side. It sent a visible shockwave through space. A ripple of force that slammed into the nearby enemy vessels. Their delicate crystalline structures were not built for this. Their internal dampeners failed. Their systems flickered. The perfect lattice formation wavered. For the first time in centuries, a Salenti bridge crew felt their ship shake. It was a foreign, terrifying sensation. Then your main guns opened up. The magnetic accelerator cannons, the MAC guns. A deep, percussive thump-thump-thump became the battle's heartbeat. It was a steady, brutal rhythm of destruction. Each solid slug was a titan's hammer blow. They smashed against Salenti's shields. The shields flared, held for a moment, then shattered like glass. The slugs tore through the elegant hulls that lay beneath. The void became a canvas of chaos, a symphony of destruction conducted by Admiral Cole. Explosions bloomed like violent flowers. Shards of crystal hull spun through clouds of burning fuel. The Salenti fought back with their silent beams of light, but their orderly tactics were useless in this maelstrom. Their precision was lost in the noise. A Salenti commander watched in horror as his ship tore itself apart. It was not a human weapon that delivered the final blow. It was the relentless vibration, the constant, booming shockwaves from nearby explosions. His ship's systems failed one by one. The hull itself began to crack under the strain. He sent one last, desperate message into the chaos, a message of pure, unadulterated shock. "The noise," his transmission wailed, "the sound itself is breaking us apart." The news of the battle hit the Galactic Council like a physical blow. Reports from the Salenti were fragmented and panicked. An entire fleet was gone, not just defeated, annihilated. The council chamber was no longer filled with murmurs of disgust. It was filled with a rising tide of fear. The quiet was broken. Their elegant theories of warfare had crumbled into dust. Their faith in silent precision was shattered. Disbelief gave way to a dawning, terrible understanding. You were not a simple anomaly. You were a fundamental challenge to their way of life. Into this new, fearful silence, a figure emerged. It moved from the shadowed alcoves reserved for the oldest members, a being known only as a keeper. It was one of the Elder Ones, a race that had witnessed the birth of the galaxy's first stars. It had not spoken in the council for 10,000 years. Its presence alone silenced the chamber. Its form was ancient and gnarled like the root of a great old tree. When it spoke, Its voice was the sound of dust settling in a forgotten tomb. "We were warned," it whispered. The sound carried to every corner of the vast room. The warning was written in the dawn texts. We chose to forget. The keeper spoke of a prophecy, not a grand tale of heroes and villains. It was a simple, stark warning about the nature of the universe. It was foretold that the great quiet would not last forever. The keeper's gaze swept across the terrified counselors. It would end, not with a whisper, but with a roar. The ancient being continued its tale. A new people would come from a lost cradle world, a world of noise and terrible violence. The prophecy described a species forged in chaos, a people who had never known the grace of silent energy. They were masters of a different kind of power, a cruder, more primal force. They would wield thunder as a weapon, the keeper rasped. They would learn to shatter the void itself. Their voices would be the roar of their engines. Their music would be the beat of their guns. The council listened in absolute horrified silence. The old words painted a terrifyingly accurate picture of you. The prophecy gave this new force a name, a title of fear spoken in a language long dead. It called you the World Breakers, a force of nature that would overturn the old order. But it also gave you another name, a specific name for your species, a name whispered from the dawn of time. The keeper looked directly at the recording of the stalwart. The prophecy called them humanity.